Okay, welcome to the Detour podcast. This is episode 8. Today we are going to be talking with Irish royalty, or some might say the Irish mafia, the amazing McQuaids. There are 10 of them. We've cut it down to 4. We've got 4 of them here. And Darach, who's the youngest of the clan, has just taken on the role as new chairman of the World Tour team, Mitchelton Scott. So welcome, well done there, mate. The 2 eldest McQuaid. So Darach's the youngest of the clan of the 10. There were 7 boys and three ladies. The 2 eldest, Pat and Kieron. I raced against both Pat and Kieron. Of course, Kieron went on to be one of the most successful Irish cycling wholesalers, and Pat, as many would know, became president of the UCI in probably one of the most testing times anyone could ever be president, I would say. And our 4th one here is the 2nd youngest of the McQuaid clan, Paul, who is a handy bike rider as well, and runs one of the most exciting bike shops in Dublin. So first of all, before I introduce all the guys, I'll just tell us everyone a little bit about our sponsors, because without great partners, we don't have a podcast. And so our first one is Bike Exchange, the world leaders in marketplacing. So where the world buys, sells, learns and rides. Bike Exchange, where a bike is never just a bike. At the moment, bike sales have gone through the roof everywhere in the world. And I don't know what it's like over there, fellas, but in Australia, you walk into a bike shop and there's hardly any bikes. It's really an amazing time. So if you want to buy a bike in Australia, you jump on the line to Bike Exchange, and you'll get one. I had to do it just last week for a mate of mine. First time I've ever had to go and buy retail in my life, and I had to jump online and buy, and got a fantastic deal with Bike Exchange. Of course, our other great partner is Let's Go Motorhomes. So when you come to Australia, fellas, you've got to get a Let's Go Motorhome and go wherever you want. I know, Kieron, you were almost here recently because you were in New Zealand just as the lockdown happened and you had to zoom off, so we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But I had it all arranged for you to get into a Let's Go Motorhome and go up to Mitchelton Wines and have a look at all that, but you never, next time, mate, next time. But it's fantastic. Get out and explore your backyard. Amazingly, with the lockdowns just changing in the last few days, but their hires of motorhomes over the last few months have been really staggeringly good, considering there's been none of the overseas market who normally grabs the vehicles, but Australians have decided, well, I can't go overseas. Let's have a look around our own backyard. But of course, that's getting a bit hard. Victoria, it's all been put into lockdown at the moment, so we'll see what happens. And our other great partner is Lexus of Blackburn.
In Europe. Yeah, the same happened in Europe. Motorhomes are just flying out at the moment, being sold.
Yeah. Well, of course, Jerry with his Jayco motorhomes is Jerry owns Let's Go Motorhomes, so all the motorhomes here are Jaycos, of course. But our other great partner is Lexus Blackburn, which is a dealer in Melbourne. But gee, they're more than just a seller of cars. They're a fantastic supporter of cycling. They sponsored the women's Herald Sun Tour last year, or early this year. They sponsored the world famous Bay Classic, my event, so Lexus of Blackburn. And they're great cycling people. They come on the Tour de France a couple of years ago, the whole family, and they love their bikes. So they're great partners to have on board. Now, with the wonders of modern technology, we have 4 McQuaids all on the line. So we've got Darach in Italy. We've got Pat in Provence in France, Kieron in Portugal, and Paul in Ireland. G'day, fellas.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Good to talk to you.
So you can all join in this first part, because I grew up one of 5 boys, and that would have been interesting. But to be a part of a family of 10, it must have been some amazing moments.
Our mother was and still is a saint, but Paul and I didn't get onto the big table until we were maybe 8 or 9. At that stage, Pat and Kieron moved out, so there's a bit of space for us to get up on the dinner table.
Yeah, on a daily basis, there were never all 10 of us in the house really at the same time. When I and myself and Kieron had left when we were sort of 17, 18 years of age, and Paul and Darach were still due to arrive soon after that. So there's, there would be 10 during festive times, Christmas and things like that. But generally speaking, it was always a big table. There was always plenty of talk at it, plenty of activity going on.
So I've been lucky enough to be good mates with Darach for nearly 20 years, and it would be about 20 years, I think. And so I've heard a lot of the early stories of the McQuaid mob, and of course about your dad, Jim, who was a champion cyclist himself, and got you. So tell us a bit about those earlier days and of Dad and how he got you all into cycling.
Go ahead, Pat and Kieron.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I grew up seeing him race. I saw him win the Grand Prix of Ireland when I was 11 years of age, and he was 41 years of age. And so I grew up, and then I was soon after that. I was a junior, So it just went from watching races to being at races, and he supported us and brought us to races, and he was a winner himself, and he always instilled that upon us that you got to win. You're not out there just to make up the numbers. You're out there to win. And every race you go into, you aim to win. So, as I say, from him finishing racing to him taking over as a sort of a mentor for myself and Kieron and Oliver, as well after that, and Jim. It happened very quickly and very, very easily, and it was one of encouragement rather than one of forcing us around like that. We were encouraged. If we wanted to ride a bike and race, we did. As some of my brothers didn't race very much at all, so it was always encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always encouragement, and always encouragement to go out and do your best. And you thought about nothing else but winning, because that's the inspirational he was. He was a winner in his life, in his bike riding, and and the dinner tables particularly. I mean, the girls weren't over happy with it looking back, with the amount of cycle racing talk that was done at those dinner tables. It was just constant. But it was all enjoyable stuff, and he inspired all of us to become what we became on the bike and off.
And he was also very inspired. When you think of the 40s and 50s, he was selected to go to the Olympics in 1948 in London. He rode World Championships in Lugano, Copenhagen, and Amsterdam, and Paris. So, I mean, he had all of these stories about riding the best riders in the world, and it certainly inspired us to want to be as good as we possibly could on the bicycle, because he was so full of stories. And our Uncle Paddy as well, who's the president of the Irish Federation, they were real double act, the pair of them, and their experiences in the 40s and 50s going to compete in and be part of some of the biggest races in the world back then. But not a lot of people in Ireland would have been travelling abroad in the 40s and 50s. So we had a very kind of unique view on the world via cycling growing up, a lot of us.
Now, the inner rivalries in the McQuaid clan. Darach tells me that he and Paul worked together really well, but with Pat and Kieron, there was a little bit more of a rivalry going on. Tell us a bit about that, fellas.
Well, there may have been, but there was also similar to Paul and Darach, because Pat won 2 Tours of Ireland, and those 2 Tours of Ireland, neither time was I in the same team as he was, but I rode harder for him to help him win those 2 Tours of Ireland than I would have had it just been a teammate of mine. I mean, the brother thing comes into it, even though we had great rivalry, and anytime Pat won a race in England, I wanted to win a race in Ireland where I was, and there was always rivalry. But at the same time, when it came down to it, push came to shove, I buried myself for him in 2 Tours of Ireland for the last 3 days.
Yeah. I had a brother.
It's only natural. There's only a year between us. We grew up a year apart, more or less, with a year's age difference. And it's only natural you're going to get rivalries within the house, within the family, every sort of thing, two different personalities. But like we said, we raced against each other. All right, we were all out there to win, and we did manage a 1, 2, 3 on occasions with 3 of us. But at the end of the day, blood is thicker than water. And
so, Wes, what do you say there, Pat? You're saying there was a few races that there was yourself, Kieran, and Oliver first, second, and third.
Yeah, we finished first, second, and third in not a few, but Enniscorthy, if I remember right.
Yeah, and also there was one day when Pat won a race in the UK, I won the senior race in Carrick-on-Shore, and Oliver won the junior race in Carrick-on-Shore. So we actually had 3 brothers winning 3 individual races.
Wow!
On the same day.
Sean Kelly had been in that
on the same day.
Kieran.
Probably. He was only a boy though.
But he was the fast boy.
I know.
So, I was just saying, when I was a youngster, I had a brother just 13 months younger than me. And I remember in a local championship on the track, 5 miler on the track, coming up 3 laps to go, I was too far back. And Dad said to me, "Get up where Greg is," my brother Greg. So I dived underneath and I got to Greg, who was sitting third wheel. And I said, "Let me in." He said, "No." Dad said. So he reluctantly let me in, and I sucked the wheel and ran second, and he got spat out the back. Afterwards, Dad said to him, "What'd you let John in for?" He said, "Well, he told me that you said." "No, I told him to get where you were. You didn't have to let him in." A big fight over the kitchen table. Yeah. But yes, I know where you're coming from. Now, you just touched on something about a young in the young days when you guys were racing, and a young Sean Kelly. Now, Kieran, Pat, and yourself, you all raced in South Africa, but it ended up coming back on you because it was a sort of the illegal tour. So tell us the story about that, because it probably cost you all, at least Kieran and you, Pat, a ride in the 76 Olympics.
Cost Pat, not me. I wouldn't have got on the team in the 76 Olympics. I'd already ridden in Munich, and I wouldn't have been in contention. Certainly cost Pat and Sean Kelly.
Yeah.
Pat, go ahead. Tell them the story.
Well, I mean, it got to August towards the end of the season, and then after the Tour of Ireland in 75, which I won, we were offered an opportunity to go to South Africa to ride a race which was taking place at the end of October. A 2-week-long race, 10 stages were double stages of the 14. And so it was a long, hard race in very hot conditions. And we were looking at having stopped racing at the end of August right through till March the following year, 76. And it was a long period off the bike, more or less, So this gave us an opportunity to go into the winter come in towards Christmas in good shape, and then start at a good level preparing for 76. And so we accepted the opportunity. We accepted the invitation and went off, and we rode out there. We knew South Africa was outside of the UCI, and we knew that because this race had been happening for years, and UCI teams had gone out to it for years and come back and they got a short 2-month sanction during the winter type of thing. And so we went ahead. And then we were unfortunately found out by, in actual fact, because of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton was the reason we were found out, because they were on their second honeymoon. They ended up in this small town that we ended up in the same place, a tourist area. And the media, all the British media and all that were with them. And the British media wanted to get a story of Richard, going down to the race because he was a big sport fan, and wishing the British and Irish team the best. And of course, the organizer said, "Well, hang on, you know the story. He's told us journalists, you know the story. These guys shouldn't really be here and so forth. And you're a South African journalist representing the Daily Mail in London." And of course, immediately the guys thought he had a scoop, and he was out the following day taking pictures of us, and then sent them back to London. London immediately sent them to British Cycling. British Cycling immediately identified us and sent the details to the Irish Cycling. And so after that, there was a lot of politics because in Ireland there was a very strong anti-apartheid movement, and they, put a lot of pressure on to ensure that we were sanctioned from the Olympics as a result. We weren't sanctioned internationally because we rode the Tour of Britain milk race in May of that year, but didn't get to Montreal in July. And no more than we were only sanctioned from that one Olympic Games. We weren't sanctioned from the Olympics for life or anything like that.
Yeah.
And our brother Oliver got selected to ride Montreal, so it was probably a good thing for Oliver.
Oh, okay. Oh, so at least they had one McQuaid there. Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah, there's so many of us. We had all angles covered,
Now, going back to the 72 Olympics, Kieron, you and I both competed in the road race at Munich. And so, of course, most people know about the terrible terrorist attack that happened there, which actually happened the night before the road race was supposed to be. What are your recollections of that?
My recollections are that the night before the Olympic road race, which was going to be the biggest day of my life and probably yours at the time as well, and everybody else was going to ride that race, we went to bed knowing that this Israeli incident had happened. We didn't know much detail about it. We knew a terrorist attack had happened and there were people dead, but we went to bed not knowing whether the Olympics were cancelled or postponed for a day or postponed for a week. And as far as we got up the following morning, we got into our racing gear, we went down to the cafeteria, and everybody running around, and there was still rumours going on as to what was going to happen, and nobody knew for sure, even at 7:30 the following morning. And eventually we found out that the Olympics were postponed for a day. Now, on the day, as you would remember, on the day that we were supposed to race, it was a downpour. There was horrendous rain. And that circuit in Munich went through a park. There was a descent inside a public park on a very narrow road with a lot of twists and turns and hairpins. It would have been a bloodbath on that. Whereas a day later, when we did actually race, it was a beautiful day. Yeah,
exactly. When we got into that road race, I remember I was lucky enough to go to a McQuaid family function in Dublin one year, and during the conversation, I found out that it was you that I nearly ran into on the first lap of that road race, because I remember they fired the gun. We go down the road, and suddenly this guy jumps out of the bushes and tries to knock this Irish guy off. It turns out to be you, Kieron, right in front of me. So I'm sort of ducking, not knowing what's going on. So you had this rebel Irish group who were trying to knock off the Irish riders. So tell us about that crazy time.
Well, when it was you remember seeing somebody jumping into the peloton that day, and so do I. I remember 3 guys appearing out from a hedge and getting into the bunch, and I thought, well, probably local German bike riders shouldn't be doing it, but it's not my affair. I've enough to be worried about. I've an Olympic road race to ride. And then a few miles later, I ended up behind one of them in the bunch, and I looked at his bike, and his bike was the same as mine. I was riding a Carlton, which was an English-made frame. This was Carlton as well. So I said, that's not German. And I looked at the jersey that he was wearing, and it was a white jersey with a green and gold band around it. And straight away I knew that these were members of the non-affiliated association in Ireland. And they were a Republican-minded organisation. And obviously we had problems with them before, where they had put oil on the road when we were racing. They actually cost me the yellow jersey in that year's Tour de France because they put tax on the road.
Tour of Ireland, you mean?
Tour of Ireland, yeah, Tour of Ireland. They put tax. I punctured twice and got a wheel change and ended up with a block that wouldn't work properly, and I ended up in a downhill sprint into Athlone, sprinting on 52.15, where I should have been on 52.13, and I was second to a Dutchman. I would have beaten him. Anyway, that was, but that's what happened. And one of our captain, if you like, he was nicknamed captain, was a man called Liam Horner, Lord of mercy on him. And I said to the other 3 lads on the team, look, there's riders from the NCA in the bunch, so watch out, there could be trouble. And Liam Horner went to one of them, John Mangan, and said, look, John, we're all Irish men. If you want to ride this race, go ahead. We just don't want any trouble, okay? And his answer to his response to Liam was, you're some effing Irish man riding with a British rider on your team, indicating that he felt Noel Taggart from the north of Ireland was British, because he wasn't a card-carrying member of Sinn Féin IRA. He was Protestant, so therefore not Irish, which was so stupid. Anyway, he pushed him off his bike, and it was headlines all over. He stopped him from competing in the race, and that was his protest. They were protesting basically about British occupation of Northern Ireland, and that's the way he protested. He pushed Noel Taggart off his bike, 31 years of age, riding the Olympic road race as the height of his career, and he was in great form and would have made an impact on that race, no doubt in my mind. So sad day.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, amazing time.
Yeah.
Now, Pat, I remember a couple of races in Belgium seeing you in the same race, because I remember you had the Viking, I think it was Viking Campagnola, I think, on the jersey.
Yeah.
And the Worlds in Nürburgring. You rode the Nürburgring Worlds, didn't you? Yeah. Which was an amazing world.
I rode a Viking for a couple of years, and in an English-based team. And we often made sorties over to Belgium for races. The Tour of Belgium we rode, and a few other semi-classic races in the Belgian calendar. And then Nürburgring in '78 as well. I rode with Kelly, and I think there might have been only the two of us on the team. It was very hard. I remember it being a very hard circuit. I got so far. While the racing was going easy, I was grand. But as soon as the big boys moved at the front, I just wasn't able to follow. I didn't have the type of racing in my legs that you need for a world championship, So it was a great experience, though.
You had a funny experience there, hadn't you? You told me a great story about Nürburgring, John.
Yes. Well, there's plenty of good stories about Nürburgring. But what was most amazing? It's the best circuit I've ever raced on, because it was, you went down to a valley, and a lot of the corners were banked like a velodrome. So you got this surreal opportunity to race around down a mountain at 100k an hour and not have to slow down for the corners. So it was a staggering course.
Yeah, no, it's true. It was the race really flowed very well, basically because it was a motor car racing circuit. But it was a hard one with a hard hill on it too every lap, so that took its toll at the end of the day. It was a very hard race at the end.
Yeah. And who won the pro race? Who won the pro race?
Either Knietemann
beat Moser. The two of them were away. Yeah. But that was my best world title. I was in the final selection, and I was riding with Gianni Savio's co-sponsored team, Carlos Galli, and the Galli equipment, a brand new bike. I've just ridden Milan Torino through the Piedmont and gone really well. So I had really great form. And both my jockey wheels fell out on the bike. So that was the end of that. By the time I got a spare bike, it was all over. But amazing world titles. And Paul, what have I got you there? You've been very silent. I hope you're with us this time, Paul? Yeah.
Talking about World Championships there, I've had two unfortunate experiences with World Championships. I rode Chambry in '89 when I was only a whippersnapper, and there was a mountain on it. No, I was a climber, so I was looking forward to this mountain every lap, but it was a bit of a disaster. And then my next Olympics was Colombia in '95.
Worlds.
The Worlds in '95, and we spent 6 weeks in Colorado acclimatizing for the race, but it was a savage hard race. I'll never forget it. Unbelievable race.
Yeah, and you, in one of the races there, you got in a breakaway with Indurain and one of the other big hitters of that time. Tell us about that story. Yeah.
The day before the race, a day or two before the road race in Colombia, we were out training on the circuit, and the French national team came up behind us, and I was in the form of my life in '95. So they came by us at the bottom of the hill, and the hammer kind of went down, and I'm with the French team, and Varank's in there and everything. And by the time we got to the top of the hill, there was only two of us, me and Varank. So I figured I was in really good shape, But a day or two later, I realised I wasn't in the shape I thought I was in. But I wasn't.
I think you peaked on the wrong day, Paul. You peaked 2 days too early.
Too soon. That's a good old phrase, isn't it?
I remember, Paul, when we were in Ireland for the Tour of Ireland that Darach was involved with. Now I can't remember what year that was. It's going back a fair while.
2009.
2009, yeah. And then afterwards, we had the Lance Armstrong amazing ride through the park, and you used to have the bike rental place right in the Phoenix Park there. That was a amazing day. I remember you lent me a bike. I was struggling to ride it at the time, but
you still owe me the rental. That wasn't a loaner. That wasn't a loaner. It was a great day in the Phoenix Park. It was a great day. It was an amazing day. The bikes took over the streets, and there was a situation room set up and everything. I think Darach was in the situation room
with the police. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great fun day. Yeah, and all every cent that not to blow my own trumpet here or anything, but seeing as you're all blowing your own trumpets, every cent that we took in that day was donated to the federation. Obviously,
the Livestrong Foundation.
Yeah, the Livestrong Foundation. Yeah. Obviously, none of it from Trevorrow because he didn't pay us.
Oh no, I don't know.
I think he probably paid you in Guinness. He must have paid you later on in Guinness.
I think I still owe the Irish Tourism Board a little bit of money for all they put a lot towards us doing a documentary that never actually quite got finished, but that's another story. We'll go with it.
It's a detour of Ireland, wasn't it?
It was a detour of Ireland. Yeah, an amazing trip though, amazing event. The final day, I've never seen it rain so hard in all my life. Was what happened on that last day?
Yeah,
I'm sure the Irish tourists would love to hear you saying that, John.
Sorry, mate.
I'm sure the Irish Tourist Board would love to hear you saying it. Never seen rain like it in my life.
Yeah. Well, luckily they never saw any of the footage. Or unluckily. But we worked hard. We did work hard. Yeah. So, Darach, we'll get on the racing side of things. You and Paul raced a bit against each other. You had some wonderful times. Yeah. Tell us about I love that story about when you went over to France to ride this pretty hard few days of racing in France, and you were sleeping in a tent.
That's right. I think it was 1991. There was an Irish team of 4 riders, which we were not selected on, but the federation said, look, if you want to come and organise your own accommodation, we'll allow you to ride as part of a 6-man Irish team. So it was the series of races called the Mutes, which are the mid-August races in Brittany, and they used to be selection races, French selection races for the World Championships. And Paul and I drove over, and we had a lovely big tent, but it was a tent at the end of the day. And I remember we were riding these races every day with the likes of Luc Leblanc and De Las Cuevas from Benesto, and they were all motorbikes, and there were circuit races that the public paid into, really high-profile races, but very, very hard. And we'd come back every day, and we had a Dutch family sleeping next to us in their tent. And when they saw us hanging up our jerseys, the green jerseys, they asked us what we were doing. We told them we were on the Irish national team riding this series of races, and the Dutch man couldn't believe it. And then one night, the rain.
A couple of times.
We got flooded one night. Yeah, I mean, the whole absolute washout one night, and we had to. We barely got our kit dried for the race the next day. But sure, it was so bloody hot. It didn't make any difference. But they were really, really hard races and very enjoyable.
So, what would you say was your biggest win, Darach?
We might get a little dig going here at Kieron, because Pat's on the trophy and Paul's on the trophy as well. Shay Elliott was a great contemporary of our father's and a good friend in the 50s, and he went on to win stages in Tour de France, the Giro, and the Vuelta. So the Shay sadly passed away, and the Shay Elliott Memorial is probably the biggest race in Ireland. Goes up a big mountain in Wicklow. So Pat won that in the early 70s, and Paul won it 89. and I won it in 1990. So I'd say that's probably my best win.
I was a big
interrupt
fan
there?
of Shay as well. Yeah, mate.
Yeah.
Can I come in with a little World Championships tent story? Seeing as Darach had a Mutes tent story. In 1965, I was 14 years of age. Pat was 15. And my father and a friend of his decided that we would go to the World Championships, which were being held in San Sebastian in Spain, northern Spain. And we flew on a pilgrimage flight to Lourdes. We did a little visitation around the cathedral and what have you in Lourdes. And then we drove down to San Sebastian, rented the car and drove down to San Sebastian. And we had borrowed a little tent and we were going to stay in the tent for the period at the World Championships.
You and
Pat and I, yeah. So we arrived into San Sebastian and we inquired, I don't know whether we knew already, but this campsite was on outside the town at the top of a mountain, and the mountain was called, I'll never forget it, 1965 now, that's a long time ago, Mont Iguelda. So Daddy and his friend Johnny here, he drove us up and helped us set up this little tent and abandoned us and headed back into town for whatever they were going to head into town for, which presumably was a good meal and a good few glasses of wine. And the pair of us were abandoned up here in this little tent, and there was a little cafe, and we went over there and we got a bit of grub, and I think we might have played a little bit of snooker or something, and we bedded down for the night. And the most horrendous thunderstorm occurred during the night. So by the time the following morning arose, we were swimming in the tent, literally. The two little sleeping bags were both in the tent. So my father arrived up and into the campsite, knew there was a problem, into the campsite, and saw the pair of us like two little drowned rats. And one part in the same campsite, former English professional Tour de France rider Vin Denson was in the same campsite, but he was in one of these tents that would be like a house, there'd be rooms inside it, and he was digging a trench outside his to let the water run off. My father said, "Come on, wrap that thing up there and we'll dump it in the back of the car and we'll take you into town." That was the year that Tom Simpson won in 1965. And he used to stay in Belgium when he started in racing on the continent first. He stayed with a cafe owner called Big Albert. And Big Albert was at the Worlds. And Big Albert was a man of about 6'6" tall and a huge body on him. When Simpson went over the line, Big Albert grabbed him and bike and all and lifted him up in the air. But what I'll never forget about what happened afterwards was Simpson went, with all his delight and elation, he went over to the GB pit, took out his kit bag, took off his GB jersey, put on a clean white Peugeot with a black and white squares jersey and a Peugeot hat, and walked up to the rostrum to be presented with the World Championship jersey. It never happened again because UCI banned it. You had to wear your national jersey. But Simpson got a win that year.
Yeah. Well, no, Museo did it cheekily in Lugano in '96. He put a Mappe cap on and he got in trouble about it.
Yeah. You remember that, Pat? Him doing that?
Yeah, I remember that well, all right, yeah.
Great.
But you mentioned Shay Elliott before. I was a big fan of.
Sorry, I also remember Minnie's a day in later years taking caps off and taking headbands off and taking this, that, and the other off guys at the bottom of the podium before they went up on the podium.
Yeah.
That's when you went over. That's when you went over to the other side, Pat. You went over to the UCI side of things, the dark side.
No, I was just going to say that I was a big fan of Shay Elliott as a kid. I can remember because there weren't many English-speaking guys racing in those days. I mean, there was Tom Simpson, him, as you mentioned, Denson, Barry Hoban. There weren't many, you know.
John, I'll tell you a good Shay Elliott story, John. Before he turned professional, he was riding in the Route France, which was the amateur Tour de France, and our uncle Paddy was the manager. And Paddy and my father were great men for big American cars in the 40s and 50s, big Studebakers. So that would have been the team car. And when Paddy arrived, he was pretty cocky about Shay Elliott. None of the French managers had heard about him, and little French that he knew, he would say, "You watch this boy; he's going to do something special this week." And the French were kind of not really believing him, So on the day that I went over the Tourmalet, Elliot got in the breakaway, and Paddy was following in his big Studebaker, and right near the top of the Tourmalet, the Studebaker overheated, and he had pulled in a big panic. Phil put a stuffed load of snow into the radiator and got down just in time to see Elliot win the stage. And he was cock-a-poop with all the Frenchmen, saying, "Didn't I tell you this was something special, this lad?"
Yeah. Well, he was, and I think he wore the leader's jersey in all 3 Grand Tours. I think in the Tour de France, Giro, and so pretty amazing.
He won his Giro stage just up the road from me here in Belluno in 1960. And his teammate Anquetil, he was riding for Anquetil, and Anquetil won that year.
Yeah.
Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
With Kieron and Pat, you both got boys who are very involved in the pro cycling world, who are both managing quite a few of the riders, Andrew and Gary, and surprisingly, you've got one manages one of the Yates boys. I think Andrew manages Simon, and Gary manages Adam Yates. That seems very strange. Twin brothers with cousins being their managers.
But very strange about it is that both Andrew and Gary are now going to be negotiating with Darach for the future of the 2 Yates brothers.
I know. I've been hearing about some of that, but he can't say anything. He's got his finger up in the middle of negotiation.
We can't say anything either.
No, but they're two. But I'm just saying, you must be very proud of those boys.
Yeah, of course. It's great to see them involved at a high level. And involved in the sport at a high level and contributing to the sport and making a living out of it as well.
Yeah.
Good living.
So guys, can you all take me? We'll save you a little bit to after Darach, because I want to talk about everything that's happening with Mitchelton Scott separately. But take us through a little bit of the journey of when you finished cycling to what happened next.
Well, I'll start when I finished cycling. When I finished cycling, I'm thinking of at a high level. In other words, internationally, although I did race some international afterwards. But I knew I wasn't going to become a professional bike rider. I knew I didn't have that quality to make it all the way and make a living at it. So I decided that, I've got to start thinking about my career, because I was second of 10 and there was 8 coming after me. There wasn't 8 born at that stage, but plenty coming after me. So you couldn't afford to be sitting around and putting your hand out for money. You had to go on and get yourself a career and get some future for yourself. And I ended up that I was looking up to end up with the bike business, and it's been a wonderful career.
Well, they tell me you were one of the biggest wholesalers in Ireland over the last 20 years.
Well, longer than 20. I mean, I was 40 years in the bike business, but as an individual wholesaler, I was probably 25 years, and I worked for a wholesale company first, and then I became partner with another former Irish cyclist. But but I'm retired now 2 years, so I'm very happy to be retired.
That's why you got the place in Portugal, of course.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And Pat, I know that you got very involved with Alan Rushton and setting up the whole Nissan Tour of Ireland. Take us through a little bit of that journey, mate.
Yeah, but a little bit like Kieron too. I had to, when I finished school and I was a good junior and so forth, and winning a good few races and raced quite a bit with Kelly. I was to go to France with Kelly, but then he turned pro as well. And I had the choice to make as well. What was I going to do? Was I going to go to the pro, have a go at the pro ranks, or find a career? And there was a safety net there that was to get a career. And so I went to college in London and studied physical education and became a PE teacher. But that kept me in sport. Then when I finished cycling myself, I became a coach. more or less the following day, the federation asked me to take a team away, a couple of weeks later, and spent a few years coaching and what have you. And then I saw that the federation themselves needed a bit of a more professional approach to things. So I got onto the board of the federation, got into administration, and became president for a few years. During that time then, or towards the end of that time, I got involved with Alan Rushton and Mick Bennett, and the three of us, between us, we organised the Nissan Classic in Ireland for 8 years, the Kellogg's Tour in the UK for 8 or 9 years, all the city centre races in Ireland, England, and a great time. And then we sort of expanded a little bit into Asia, into the Philippines, into Malaysia, organising races out there. So it was a very, very busy period for me during all that. And at the same time, I ended up getting onto the board of the UCI. And never in my wildest dreams did I ever dream I would end up as president of the UCI at any time, even when I got on the board of the UCI. But by circumstances and the way things just worked out, I ended up getting put forward and elected as president of the UCI, and had 8 years, which you mentioned at the very beginning, 8 very tempestuous years. There was a lot of difficulties, a lot of wars, a lot of fighting, a lot of drug taking, and a lot of issues to be dealt with. And I just got stuck in and do them. And I think the career I had, both on the bike and also, for instance, I organised the 1998 start of the Tour de France in Ireland, which was a famous Festina start. And that was meant to be a sort of stepping stone for a new Tour of Ireland, because the Nissan had finished a few years earlier. But of course, the Festina thing blew that out the window, and so the doping scenario had a big effect on me personally. Then, even on my career and on my income and everything. So, I had a very strong views on doping, or on anti-doping as such. And I kept those views and tried to do what I could as I was president of the UCI.
Just while we're talking about that '98 tour, which started in Dublin, that was my second Tour de France. I'd been in '91. That was my first time back for a few years, and that was an amazing few days in Ireland. And I can remember the crowds were humongous, and I think it was stage 2. The stage went around the big circuit. We climbed that big hill. I can't remember the name of the hill.
The Wicklow Gap.
The Wicklow Gap. The wind was that strong. That's where everyone said the race would split apart. But it was that strong that no one could get away. It was because it was a direct head wind.
Tell Paul.
I was about to say
him at the top of the Wicklow Gap with a big tent.
Well, I can remember. I know. I can remember getting pulling in the car at the top of that to get out to watch them come up, and I had to get it back in the car. I couldn't stand up, and I remember looking over to the big field where all the marquees were there, and I thought, "Oh, the poor buggers that are doing that. It's getting blown away." I didn't know at the time that was you, Paul.
Yeah, at the time, when I finished racing, I set up a cycling holiday company in the west of Ireland, and I ran that for 9 years, but 2 years after I set it up, this big opportunity arrived in the Tour de France coming to Ireland. So I went from having about 15, 20 people per tour to having 92 people from literally all around the world on a week-long cycling holiday to see the Tour de France. And I rented out a huge big marquee, had it erected 2 nights previous, had all the catering up there at 5 o'clock in the morning. And at about 6 o'clock in the morning, the whole fucking thing blew down. So we all cycled, all my 92 people and myself cycled from Dublin to the top of the Wicklow Gap. That was the plan. Cycle up there, have a breakfast, and then watch the race go by. When we all got to the top of the Wicklow Gap, most of the 92 of us re-erected that marquee, and we got it up. But after the race went by, it pretty well blew down again. It was definitely not canapes and nice coffee and wine and stuff like that. It was get stuck in and get this back up. Yeah.
Tell you another story of the same tour. I had been working on that tour since 1993, coming to Ireland. With Jean-Marie Leblanc and with others, and also with officials and Irish government officials and all that. And the Irish government had never, up to that point, sponsored or paid for a sporting event to come into Ireland, or an international sporting event. And however, we eventually convinced him, the Minister of Tourism at the time, who was Enda Kenny, later to become Prime Minister, and we had convinced him that it would be a good investment. And there was one guy who was the chief civil servant in Ireland at the time, who was a real francophone. And he was a big help to me in helping me through the corridors of power and so forth. And on the Sunday, and now the Irish government invested, I think, something like $1.5 million directly to ASO. And then probably there was 7 or 8 or 9 million even spent on infrastructure and all that, improving roads and all that type of thing, but they're long-term investments. But we were sitting at the tent at the finish in the Phoenix Park on the same stage you're talking about that went through Wicklow. And one stage was passing through with a lake in front of it and the hills and the mountains behind it and forestry and everything. And it seemed to take about 2 minutes for the bunch to cross along in front of this. And this guy, Porrick, nudged me on the arm and he says, Pat, look at that television image there. He says, no money. That's going live all over the world right now. No money would pay for the advertising Ireland is getting there. So it showed you, as far as he was concerned, the return on the investment was massive, which is why now we see, the Copenhagen and all these places starting the Grand Tours, because it's a cheap investment in the long term.
Oh, for sure. No doubt about that. So when you're talking about the situation with the UCI, one of the major battles you had in your presidency was your battle with the UCI, with the ASO. What was the reasons? What caused all of that angst between UCI and ASO?
Basically, it was. My predecessor, Hein Verbruggen, changed the sport dramatically from when he took over in 1993, when professional cycling was a real dark sport with black money being paid to riders and under-the-counter payments and no organisation, no unions, nothing involved, no structure. Over a period of a good many years, he gradually improved all the structure and professionalised it. And then I went on the board in 97. And during 98 and 99, he came up with the idea of a Pro Tour, which is now the UCI World Tour. And that Pro Tour, he wanted to give guarantees to sponsors, or that they had guarantees that they would ride the Tour de France so many years, 3 or 4 years in a time, and give them a license so that they would ride it. And he wanted both the big races to guarantee they would take the top teams, and the top teams to guarantee they would ride all the races. And that gave some security to sponsors, in a sense. And then ASO didn't want to do this because they wanted the right to invite whatever teams they wanted into the race, and they felt that UCI was encroaching on their sort of historic rights, so to speak. So there was a right battle. It started before I became president, and I took over in the middle of it and continued. The battle continued until 2008. When ASO decided to take Paris-Nice and Tour de France outside of the UCI calendar. And that brings me on to another story where you're involved as well, because in 98 on the tour, I was due to go down to Bordeaux to fly down to Bordeaux and be interviewed by television, finish line of the stage of the Tour de France.
2008, not 98, in 2008.
2008, yeah, sorry. Yeah. I was to go down and be interviewed by French television. And so I'd arranged it, and I said, okay, I'll go down and meet them, and the finish line, they have this live show that they do every day. But then ASO heard that I was coming down to be interviewed by French television, so ASO said, there's no way he's coming anywhere near this race. There's no way he's coming up on your platform this afternoon. So the producer rang me and said, look, I got a problem here. We're going to do the interview at the airport in Bordeaux, Marignan Airport, and instead of at the finish line. And so I says, okay, no problem. So
is this a long story, Pat? Is this a long story?
I flew down to the airport and did the interview, and I decided, well, I've hired a car anyway, I might as well go and see the race. And I went around then, and that evening I'd know where to stay, and I was looking for somewhere to stay. And I met up with this Aussie gang, which you were leading, staying out
Misleading.
in the middle of nowhere. And so I joined you for the evening for the barbecue, and we'd a great night's crack.
We had great, and I was part of that Aussie gang too, and we did have a good crack that night.
Good crack, yeah. I remember it well.
So, what year was the Tour de France film, the first documentary?
2005. So
you and I had a famous episode there where we got to the hotel at the top of the Col de Montgenèvre, and there was two rooms lacking, so we ended up in Hotel Kia Carnival, both sleeping in the car at the front. Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, that's because Jerry brought some extra guests, so we were good enough to give up our rooms and sleep in the cars, because that's the type of guys we are, you know.
Exactly.
But, the good old days. Yeah, 2005 and 2007 were the two detours, and I reckon it was 2007. It might have been when you were there with us, Pat, when you did that interview. But it was a what did you have, 8 years as president, or how many years as president, Pat?
8 years, yeah, 2 mandates, yeah.
So it'd been remembered for, you know, some of your battles with ASO, and of course they were the years of the EPO, which was the insidious drug that really damaged our sport more than any other thing, I believe. But it was something we couldn't even test for in the beginning, so that was a pretty tough one to handle. You copped a lot of flack for that, but it was a pretty tough time. What are your memories of that? And of course, Lance, the years of Lance as well.
Yeah, I mean, the memories of it are that it was there, and we knew EPO was being used, but we tested it. And WADA, which were in the testing authority, they had no test for it either. So all we could do initially was control the blood levels of riders and throw them out of races if their hematocrit was too high. And all at the same time, the UCI was investing money with laboratories to try and develop a test for it. And so when the test came about, which was in 2000, we used it immediately before the Olympic Games in Sydney. And then, had good success with it in terms of catching cheats for several years afterwards. But I think the biggest breakthrough from my point of view was the biological passport. And that was when UCI and I was in charge of working with the Lausanne laboratory to develop the biological passport. And when it came in, it changed the whole picture completely. And I think the sport is now benefiting greatly from the biological passport, the continued use of it. There are some rumors that guys are finding ways around it, but even the experts are saying if they find a way around it, it's only a 1% or a 0.5% or a maximum 2% advantage. Whereas with EPO, when it was being used and was uncontrollable, you were looking at 15% of an advantage.
Exactly right, 15%. Yeah.
For me, that was the biggest change, and thankfully that came in. And for the last couple of years of my presidency, the passport had a big bearing on the change of the sport.
So Lance, in his final days, cracked it with you. You copped a few blasts from Lance, but then earlier you were accused of helping Lance, so you couldn't win either way.
Well, the UCI was accused of helping Lance more so than I was, because Lance retired the same year I was elected president. And it was only when he came back then 3 or 4 years later that he was racing under my era, for the 2 years that he raced. Yeah. But no, there were all sorts of rumors. But I mean, the point is the cheats, and the cheats and the guys who made all those accusations, the Landises, the Hamiltons, all of these guys who eventually got caught, even though they thought they would never get caught. And as soon as they get caught, they start blaming the UCI, and they start saying the UCI did this, the UCI did that. Most of which was rubbish. All they were doing was trying to cover up their own sins. Yeah.
But you even became famous, Pat, where you made it into an episode of South Park.
I never actually saw it myself, where I was.
That's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing. Never good to see a cartoon version of yourself.
The other one was the Russian, or was it Turkmenistan, where it was Igor Makarov, who you were accused of being in his pocket at one stage, and then he turned against you, and he was maybe he didn't pay enough. I don't know, but he was the one who really fought very hard to get rid of you.
He did indeed, yeah, and it's probably not for this program the true stories of everything that happened there. But I mean, when you just look at Makarov was operating at the same time and with the same individuals who were around with the Russian doping case that came clear a couple of years later, and when the Russian authorities were hiding samples and all this sort of thing. And Makarov was involved with all those guys too, So we didn't see eye to eye on several ways of approaching the sport, and he eventually used his power and his money to ensure that I got out, that he stayed in and I got out.
And then you had Brian Cookson, who had been your loyal ally at one stage to becoming a major rival.
Yeah, he's the guy that I encouraged to come onto the board of the UCI, and then he became a rival. He went for it, and he initially told me he would never do it, and then he took advantage of Makarov and Makarov's dislike of me to put his name forward. And I think he then became an honorary president rather than a real president, because he didn't make any decisions. It was his director made all the decisions. And he stayed in Manchester and just flew around the world going to races and what have you, which was not the way a president, and the way I was president was an executive president in the office every day, running the sport. He never did that. It was the people below him that did it for him.
So, Darach, because we're going to run out of time soon, we've only got halfway through my questions here, but Darach, take us through a little bit of your journey. I know that you had a lot to do with running the Tour of Ireland, especially the Giro start in Belfast, which I was lucky enough to be at, which was amazing. Take us through that journey.
Yeah, I suppose I stopped racing in '95 and went into business with our sister Anne, a publishing company. We did the first ever official guide for the Tour de France in French, German, English language editions. Did the official magazines for races like the Tour de Pont in America, Mountain Bike World Cups, Tour of China. So pretty exciting times in the mid to late 90s. Then early 2000s, when I bumped into you, I was doing some consulting for American television on the Tour de France, and I'd help Paul out on his Celtic Trails tours sometimes, which was hard work, but the payments in Guinness was really worth it. In the west of Ireland, you'd cycle in the crosswinds 1 hour, and you'd be sitting in the pub the next hour's magic. And then after the Tour of Ireland, I actually heard that the Giro were looking at going to Washington DC. So I said, look, before they come to go to DC, they can at least stop in Ireland. So I went to Milan and got talking to the Giro and persuaded the Irish governments north and south to put up the money for the Giro to start in Northern Ireland and bring it down to Dublin. So that was pretty amazing, because the public, both north and south, really embraced it. There was pink sheep and pink horses and pylons, electric pylons and Coast Guard boats and everything. So the Giro project was really, really special. And then, of course, Green Edge won the opening time trial in Belfast. So
they did.
It was also a great start for the team.
Just buddy for one thing, I've got to say that second stage, the prologue was great, and Green Edge won the prologue, wonderful. But that second stage blew me away because it's such a beautiful stage. But it was a terrible day. It poured rain, but it made no difference. The people just came out anyway. A huge crowd standing there in the pouring rain.
Their shorts, happy as happy. I mean, everybody was just so happy because Northern Ireland had a pretty rough few decades, 40, 50 years. So there's no doubt that no matter what side of the fence you're on, the whole country came together to support the Giro. So it was very, very satisfying. I mean, our parents are both from Northern Ireland. So, and we've got family on both sides of the kind of tribal fence up there. So it was very, very satisfying to see a bike race bring the whole country together like that.
And so you were also very involved in the World Championships in Richmond in the USA, getting them over there. So tell us about that story.
Yeah, in fact, that actually started, Pat might not remember this, but it started in Italy. I was at the Mountain Bike Worlds, and I went to dinner with Pat and some of the US Federation guys, and midway through this very pleasant dinner, Pat launched into them and said, "What are you doing? There hasn't been a Worlds since '86, Colorado Springs. America's one of the founding members of the UCI. Liven yourselves and put a bid in for Road Worlds." So my business partner at the time was based in Richmond, Virginia, and we identified two cities, Portland, Oregon, or Richmond, to go after the mayor and try and convince them to do Worlds. And Richmond were the ones that came on board. It was a little bit awkward because it was awkward for Pat and it was awkward for me because I think people thought there was a bit of a behind the scenes agreement between Pat and I. Whereas in fact, Pat ran a mile from it and said, "Okay, deal with Garrett or whatever," and it was a normal bid. Pat would have been on a plane doing a helicopter trip around the route, but because I was his brother, it was kind of a bit different. But we got there in the end, and it was a wonderful course with a cobble climb, and it was great to see the Worlds back in America.
Yeah, sensational. So now you are the chairman of Mitchelton Scott, a new position. And I've been talking to you over the last few weeks. I know you're very busy, but take us on that journey of the last few years with Mitchelton Scott.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I've been friends with yourself and then Jerry for many years. And I was at the Vuelta, I think, in 2017. Jerry asked me to come on and help from the commercial side with the team, and that's been a great experience. And then earlier this year, obviously with COVID and this kind of global disaster, everybody was in a bit of bother in the middle of the lockdown, and this Spanish entity kind of came onto the horizon. But it turned out it really wasn't the right fit for the team, and Jerry was smart enough to recognise that before it was too late. Jerry decided to recommit to the team for more than two more seasons, and he asked myself to step up as the chairman to be his representative here up in Europe, which is essentially a European-based sport, even though they do the full summer of cycling in Australia. So it's a great honour to lead the team. I mean, we were down at Strade Bianche in Siena on Sunday, and Annemiek van Vleuten, the current world champion, won that race in unbelievable style. So it's certainly a pleasure to lead such an amazing organisation and be Jerry's man on the spot, so to speak. So it's very exciting.
Yes, and I'm a bit disappointed I won't be at the Tour de France in a few weeks' time. It'll be the first one I've missed in about 23 years. But you never know. I could maybe twist a few arms, and I am.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think from a people who work in the sport, having just done Strade Bianche, it's now very I think from the outside it looks great, but I'm not sure. I'm only going to go to Thursday, Friday, and maybe the first stage because, given all these protocols and controls, which are right and proper, it's not going to be the normal experience for people working on the race in terms of being able to sit down at a cafe or a wine bar, have a drink, and then go talk to riders or anything. It's going to be a different.
John, another point on this is I wouldn't be 100% certain that the Tour de France will take place.
Well, exactly.
In France, over the last 3 days, 1,000 new cases per day. And Nice in itself is one of the hotspots in France over the past week or so. And we're still three weeks away from the Tour de France. So unless things improve a bit, or if they disimprove, there may be some shocks down the road. But so I wouldn't be booking the flight ticket quite yet, Jerry.
Yeah. So we're getting put into lockdown in Victoria because we've got 300 cases a day, and we're being put into full lockdown. So
and there's 1,000 cases a day. And there's poor Paul. He's in Dublin and he hasn't had a pint in a pub in 6 months. Imagine not having a pint in Dublin in 6 months.
I had one tonight. Sorry about that.
What's that been like, Paul? What's Dublin like without the pubs open, Paul? I can't imagine it.
It's a completely different place. But at the start of it, I said, right, I'm going to ride my bike every day. and approach it. Of course, 5 months ago, we didn't know what next month is going to be or the month after. But Dublin is a completely different place to what it was 6 months ago. Completely different. And they're supposed to reopen the pubs fully on Monday, and now the talk is that they're not going to do that because social distancing isn't really being practiced. So it's a very different landscape to what it was 6 months ago. That's for sure.
Well, the world is.
But you can still ride your bike every day.
Yes, well, in Melbourne now, you cannot go more than 5 kilometres away from your house, even if you're riding your bike. Yeah, that's the new law just brought in, but that's Melbourne only because Melbourne's got the major concern. I'm in Geelong, which is just up the road, but we're going to stage 3, which is their stage 4. So I can still go for a really long ride. I can't because I'm not physically capable, but I could. So it's interesting. I hear you talking, Darach, Pat, that you are still got some severe doubts that the season will be able to finish.
The Giro's in October, John. The Giro's in October. I mean,
I know.
It's August here now. It's sunny now, but I mean, earlier on there was some downpour here, and it was winter cold. I can't. Yeah. I mean, the Giro in October. I hope it happens, but there'll be snow.
I really feel for some of these teams. I know a lot of the teams financially are on the brink, really, and they need the season to happen to survive. I could see quite a few teams folding if the season got cancelled. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you, but at the same time, you look at France and you look at a little village that has the Tour de France. The village hasn't had any cases, and the Tour de France arrives, and some journalists stay there, and some organisation or publicity caravan or whatever, and the Tour de France leaves the next day, and there's 15 or 20 cases in that town. Can you imagine what that town's going to feel like in terms of how they feel about cycling? I mean, it's a very difficult thing to balance.
Yeah. So, well, there's quite a few races coming. We've just had the two tours, one in Spain and France, and Strade Bianca. There hasn't been any cases come out of that, though, have there?
No.
That's true. That's true. But I think a stage race is a bit different. I mean, we were staying in this hotel on our own last weekend, out in the middle of nowhere. But you get the numbers involved with a Grand Tour, and you're 4 or 5 teams in the hotel. You've got, I mean, when I read that the publicity caravan was going to be in the tour, I thought that was a bit much. It's hard to know.
Did you say they are doing the publicity caravan, or they're not?
It's a smaller one, but they're doing it. And I mean, I think the reason is in France, historically, a lot of the general public actually, maybe not the greatest thing to say, but they don't come out to watch a bike race. They come out to get some free swag from the publicity caravan. So I think, would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's the proposal for the crowds at the Tour de France? Are people allowed to come from everywhere? Is there going to be restrictions on who can come?
Oh, there are. There are going to be restrictions at the start area and at the finish area. The teams are all going to be completely cut off. There's no autographs being allowed to be signed, and any of this sort of thing, and it'll be very, very strict. And then on the hills itself, on the main mountains of the tour, the police are going to be stopping cars going up. They'll allow people up on bikes or to walk up, and so they can only go a certain distance, but they control the numbers that are on the mountain, and hopefully that might do the job. But I mean, if there's guys up there that have been for the past good many years now, and they're up there for about 2 or 3 days, and they have a big supply of drink on them, and then the race comes through, and these guys are running along like idiots alongside, breathing on the cyclists and everything. Anything can happen, and people lose.
I agree.
Are there going to be strict social distancing protocol?
There will be requested, yeah, but
difficult to enforce. I mean, even at the weekend on Strade Bianchi, there was a steep hairpin, and there must have been about 20 spectators with none of them with masks, all like they normally do in a race, running beside a rider. I mean, it's got to be so difficult to control.
Yeah, really, that's amazing. Yeah. So I was talking to Stuart O'Grady the other day. He's still pretty confident that the teams will be coming out for the Tour Down Under in January. Matter of fact, he's getting a great response from the World Tour teams who are keen to come back to Australia. I think they feel that it's probably a bit safer. Maybe not in Victoria at the moment, but the rest of Australia is virtually clear. So,
and I was talking to Jerry the other day, and he's saying that the South Australian government is going to do some special exemptions for the teams coming in and find places for them to stay, to isolate and everything in advance.
Yeah, so the Cadell Evans race, that's still supposed to go. And, of course, the world-famous Bay Classic, that's planning to go.
You organised? Good man.
But what do you think? It's going to be got to get through this season, of course. But what do you think about the future for our great sport?
I'd be positive for the future because, okay, we got to get through this season, and there may be some hiccups. There's no doubt in the next 2 months over, with the races and with cases, etc., etc. But then when we get into next year, surely the vaccine's going to be around by then. They're saying the end of this year or early next year, the vaccine will be there. That'll change the picture completely. And then we're into hopefully a normal season next year. And for those teams that can see through this winter, I say the sport will be back to what it was next year, even greater than it is now. I mean, the images from Strad Blanche last Saturday on the television for a sport to come out as its first international event, were absolutely amazing images.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so the sport can do it.
Yeah. No, they're amazing races. Look, guys, I got to say, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed this podcast, catch up with you guys. And I look forward to the day when we can catch up again in person.
And have a beer.
Have a quiet pint, yes, for sure.
Yeah, you're buying, John.
No doubt. I think you owe me one, Pat, but anyway, that's fine. But look, thanks, fellas. I really appreciate it because, I mean, when you think we're in Italy, Dublin, France, and Portugal, and Australia, it's not bad. We're right around the top. So, yeah, really appreciate it, guys, and look forward to catching up soon.
Good fun. It's been good fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dead on. You take care, John.
Take care, boys. Okay. Ciao.